3 years have gone in discussions that have been totally sterile, that seem to surpass the limits of democracy, something that goes in backs and comes in backs, where the Parliament of the Great Britain has not been able to have a single resolution. There are interests that are confronting, and everything goes around how to solve a problem in a democracy. What is it? What do they need? What is it better for them? A relationship with Europe, with the U.S.? This is we're talking about the United Kingdom. The truth is that Brexit is bringing upon us to be or not to be. This is the dilemma. We're going to see what's going on in the Brexit topic. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Let's see more information, guests, and as always, your critical thinking. Let's begin. Let me tell you, several things that seem to be defeats for the Conservative Party of Great Britain. On September 4th, last week, the Parliament, the Chamber of the Commons, approved a law that there would be a Brexit with no agreement, and it demands to extend the time limit, which is October 31st. Queen Elizabeth has approved, so immediately it was requested. So Johnson should send a letter asking for this extension. On its behalf, the Prime Minister has asked for a 5-week recess of the Parliament until October 14. Some say, his detractors, they say that this is to reduce the maneuver action in the legislative branch. And this also was approved by the Queen. So, this being like it is, let's speak about this law specifically that was approved by the British Parliament. The Prime Minister questions saying the following. This bill will put an end to the negotiations, and it demands an extension, maybe for some years, and it demands that the U.S. has to take all of the conditions imposed. The Parliament didn't approve the option of having elections in October that he proposed as a solution. This non-approval was done this Monday, very early in the morning. And Johnson is also not allowed to publish documents with the consequences of having no agreement when leaving the Brexit. Let's hear what Johnson and Corbyn say. Before, I called the Camera to believe in the people. However, they think that is not possible. I think that the Prime Minister should go to a negotiation without the option of withdrawal. Nobody really respects the will of the people. And we're going to spend much more money because of this, money that could go to hospitals and education. They did not even approve to have a route they want, and not even they will accept to anticipate elections, to hear the people. I hope that the Prime Minister reflects on closing the Parliament to avoid a government to be accounted for, because this is what he has done today, and this is what he proposes to do to this country. Did you see the reaction of Boris Johnson while Jeremy Corbyn was saying that that the government should be accountable? And they were speaking that well, the President of the European Union said this today. We don't want Brexit, but we respect the decisions that have been taken by our British friends. In case that it should happen, the Brexit will not be the end of something, but the beginning of a future relation. And to end with the opinions of the guests, the United States also has something to say. I spoke to President Trump this morning, and he asked me to send the best greetings and to assure that the U.S. supports the decision of the UK to abandon the European Union. But he also wants me to convey that the United States is ready to negotiate immediately a free trade agreement with the UK. We really believe that a free trade agreement with the US and the UK could increase the commerce between our countries in 3 or 4 times. We're willing to do this as fast as possible. We will do everything in our hands to do so. If let's go to our maps and to see these scenarios. Brexit, the first one would be a Brexit with an agreement. At the moment, this would be possible for October 31st. And this would happen if before both parties have an agreement. Should Johnson request an extension by the 31st of 2020 through a bill that was approved, the limit would be for October 31st. If any of the 2 cases, or even for a third date, it is also possible that a normal procedure would be done and would have 21 months of transition requires renegotiation of the agreement of the November 2018. This scenario would imply a renegotiation of the agreement of November 2018, because as it is, it has been rejected. Unless at the last minute there's a change. Brexit without an agreement. This would be an immediate exit. This is what Johnson proposes. They would exit the customs union and the single market. And it would go to a dialogue. Just recently, the spokesperson said that the negotiations are paralyzed. The Office of Commercial Affairs says that leaving without any agreement, it could make the GDP fall 9%. And let's not forget that if the UK leaves, they would have to have taxes to everything they import. And the focus would be on medicines and financial services. If there's a Brexit cancellation, there's also that option. If we revoke Article 50, the norm within the legislation of the European Union that allows a country to leave. Now, fourth option would be a second referendum. This would be to repeat the event of June 23rd of 2016. The majority at the vote said that they leave Brexit. A fifth option would be anticipated elections. If this would happen, then the forces would decide what the new decisions are. There might be a shift in Westminster, and this would open new scenarios. And of the pivotal points would be the Irish backstop. This would avoid the border control points between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. I'm going to go to digital websites. One of them is Cambio 16. Trump promises Johnson an agreement after the Brexit. And now it happens that in the G7, in this recent summit, Boris Johnson met with the President of the US, Donald Trump. This is the first meeting they have after Johnson assumes his post. And in a press conference after this meeting, that was basically a working breakfast, Trump said that they work in a conjoint agreement that will have no obstacles. There are great opportunities for the UK that at the moment cannot take advantage of because they are part of the European Union. And the Prime Minister said that his country is in favor of the commercial peace and free trade. This is what they said. And Trump also said that I think that it would be a great Prime Minister. Let's not forget that when Johnson was running for office, he said, Donald Trump said, this is the most adequate man to lead the UK out of the European Union. Let's go to Vanguard. This digital site says Brussels calls for to be ready for a Brexit with no agreement. The European Commission compares leaving the European Union without Brexit to a natural disaster. He says that it's a formula that what he says is that there will be some help, but it would be just like a natural disaster. This is a panorama that is forthcoming, and with the leaving of Brexit, with leaving the UK of the EU without any agreement. Okay, these are things. Let's go to our recommendation. We have of the Voltaire Network. It says Brexit, European Union and Democracy. It's written by Thierry Meyssan. He's a French intellectual. It says that there's been a mistake in an assessment because there has been for Churchill, it wasn't about joining democracies or creating a supranational state, but to avoid to have a hegemonic power in the continent, in the European continent. So this means to not let Germany to have to become big again. This goes against all of the slogans that were used so skillfully Churchill used, because what they didn't want. He goes on to say, to weaken the two main forces una contra otra desde junio de 1941 hasta septiembre de 1943 sin implicar en la lucha un solo ejército británico. Esa es la postura. This is the posture of Thierry Meyssan. As always, we recommend that you read this article at voltaire.net.org. Let's go to Pablo Navarrete in London. He's our correspondent. Pablo, how are you?
Desde Londres, muy buenos días a todos los televidentes de Telesur.
Hello, greetings from London. Today, Tuesday, London has no parliament because it's been suspended after the first Prime Minister took the decision that was approved by the Queen Elizabeth to suspend the Parliament as of today till October 14. For this decision, there has been lots of criticism on behalf of the opposition parties and the civil society, who manifested on the outside of his residence. It is said that this is a blow from Boris Johnson, and his critics say that this is a way that there will be no debate in the Parliament prior to the UK leaving the EU. This is in October 31st. He says that this will be the last date and there will be no extension, because
un tratado, el llamado no deal, que es lo que los partidos de oposición
However,
diciendo que quieren evitar a
the
toda costa. Ahora, Boris Johnson ha
opposition
dicho
doesn't
que,
want to
por su
leave
parte, él
the
quiere una elección
EU
general,
without an agreement.
para ponerle
Boris Johnson says that he wants a
votantes
general
británicos
election
qué es lo que quieren hacer ellos.
to
El
ask the
Partido Laborista
voters
ha
what they
dicho,
want to do.
Jeremy Corbyn, liderado por el
Jeremy
socialista, que no
Corbyn
están en contra,
has
pero
said
primero
that he
quieren
is
asegurarse
opposed to
que,
it. But first, he wants to
un
assure
voto en el Parlamento en
that
contra
a
del
vote
no
in
deal
the
que
Parliament
salirse sin acuerdo
against
del Brexit
leaving,
se ponga en la ley. Y
leaving
hasta
the
que no
EU
tenga,
without an agreement
que no sea ley, no pueden
should be
acordar
stalled.
esta elección general, y hay que dicen que Boris Johnson es
So
una
Boris
persona muy
Johnson,
poco confiable.
some say that he is not
Pase lo que
reliable.
pase,
So whatever happens,
todo indica que va a haber una
everything
elección
indicates
general,
that there will
más
be a
pronto
general
que
election
tarde,
sooner than
y
later.
para eso,
And
Boris
for
Johnson
this,
está
Boris
tratando
Johnson
de, representar como
is
el
trying to
candidato
represent
del
himself
pueblo, de
as
alguna
the
forma,
candidate of
de
the
la gente que
people,
votó por el Brexit,
of
y
those who
poner a
voted for
Jeremy
Brexit,
Corbyn,
and to put
como
Jeremy
un
Corbyn
candidato de la
in a
élite del
candidate of
Parlamento
the
que está
elite of
tratando
the
de,
Parliament who is
no
trying
acceder los deseos del
to
referéndum
not
para
follow
salirse
the will
del
of the
bloque
referendum.
comunitario. Por su parte, Jeremy Corbyn
On
hoy
his
estuvo
behalf,
hablando
Jeremy
en
Corbyn
el Congreso
spoke
anual de
in the
la
annual
Federación
Congress
de Trabajadores Británicos,
of the
la
Union
TUC,
of the
que
workers
representa más
in
de
UK that
5.5
represents
millones de trabajadores,
more than
y ha dicho que
5.5 million
sí,
workers,
que
and has said
ciertamente está hablando
that, of
sobre el
course,
tema de una
that in
elección general,
fact,
cuál será
that when it's up to a
plataforma
general
del
election,
Partido Laborista y la
what will
necesidad
be
de
the
trascender el
platform
tema Brexit
of
para
his
poner en
party.
la mesa que el debate es sobre qué tipo de
And
sociedad
the debate
quiere
will
el
be
Reino
in
Unido,
what
una
type
donde se
of
favorecen los
society they want,
trabajadores,
in one that favors the
la gran
workers,
mayoría, o
the great majority,
la de Boris Johnson, como
or
lo
one
pinta
like
Jeremy
Boris
Corbyn, que es
Johnson
una sociedad
that
para
is
los
a
ricos, para la
society for the
élite.
rich people
Por
and
su
for
parte,
the
hemos
elite.
hablado de la estrategia de
There
Boris
is
Johnson.
a strategy of
Entonces, todo
Boris
indica que va a haber
Johnson
una
that
elección general,
indicates
que
that there
la
will
crisis
be a
política
general
desatada por el
election
Brexit
and
no
that
va a tener
this
solución
political crisis will
sin una
have no
elección
solution
general. Ahora,
without a
la clave va a
general
ser si
election.
efectivamente va a poder Boris Johnson
So now Boris
hacer las
Johnson,
maniobras para salirse
right now,
del bloque
he has to
comunitario
find
del
a
31
way
o
out
antes,
of this
sin
problem.
o sin acuerdo. Estaremos informando todo lo que ocurre
We'll
para
keep
Telesur.
on
Ahora
posting
de
you.
vuelta al estudio.
Thank you very much.
Vale, gracias Pablo por esta conexión desde Londres. Bueno,
Thank you very much, Pablo, for your connections from London. So there are many aspects that we can analyze in this new space. What are the factors that can explain why the Brexit has not gone through yet? It should have been done by March, and now it's been postponed to October, and it's still apparently there is still no decision. What Pablo Navarrete just said, it's very important when we think of what type of democracy we need. What do we find ourselves? We see a democratic debate in a country with a classist monarchy. And we also will see the interest of the US and other actors. We'll be right back. Brexit, Crossroads that makes even things worse. We want to establish a new approximation. What factors explain that the Brexit has not been able to fulfill its purposes that was originally set by March 21st? We ask ourselves with the questions that we set before we went to our first pause. Several reasons have delayed the Brexit. One of them is the crisis that the Conservative Party has become even worse after Boris Johnson has arrived to power. On one side, there is people who want a more pure Brexit, and they think that this will make them have control of their economy. On the other hand, the ones who want a softer Brexit, they think it's possible to keep in the single market, and this will allow a better flow of commercial aspects. And they could also keep on being a part of the customs union. However, the parties of the hard Brexit think that the best thing is that UK has absolute negotiation power with other countries. Another element that has influence on the delay are the different points of view between the main European nations. Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, has a more flexible attitude towards the UK to give them time so they can find minimum consensus within the Parliament. On its behalf, Emmanuel Macron has been harder since the beginning and always established shorter terms to leave the European Union, because after all, that was their election. Behind these two positions, there are other countries of the European Hungary and Scandinavian countries also want the thing that Angela Merkel wants. Spain, Belgium, Luxembourg is more on the Macron side. And they say that the rest of the continent cannot be a hostage of the UK's reality. And something else, let's see if Boris Johnson is trapped in a cul-de-sac. Who could substitute him? Who are the main figures that could do this?
Boris Johnson,
originally American, and he's journalist. His father held several posts, and that led him to be, ever since he was small, to have a privileged life. He is the only person who is anti-European in his family. In the past, he was a political columnist and allowed him to express his criticism against the European Union and the political parties in his country. After Theresa May, on June 17, he took the office. He was a mayor of London for 6 years, and was also a chancellor during May's government. He's considered the main promoter of Brexit. This, apparently, he thinks is a personal matter. Now that he's a prime minister, he is going to do away with the Brexit. And along with him, there are people that are called Eurosceptic, pro-Israel, and their objective is to establish a relationship with the United States. They think that later, after the Brexit, he could go to Brussels and negotiate. But what he's not willing to do is to ask for an extension. Just recently in Shire, he said that he prefers to be dead instead of doing this. He said that the UK will leave the European Union with or without an agreement. In 48 hours, he has 3 parliamentary defeats. This could even mean his post. Okay, now it's time to analyze and to state all the questions that we have just left there floating. Let's start with Jorge Martin. He's a journalist of wide experience. He's joining us from Great Britain. Then we have Dr. Uresta. He's an international analyst from France. Let's start with Jorge. Thank you for answering our call. From your perspective, why has Brexit gone through up until now? Hi, good morning. First of all, it's important to say that Great Britain is living the most harsh constitutional crisis in the past 200 years. And in fact, what has stopped the Brexit to go through is the big conflict that there's beyond the two interests. One, the interest for the dominating powers, because they're not interested in having a Brexit, due to the consequences, the economic consequences it could have. And there are several lines that they don't want to cross, and that have a lot to do with the European Union. And now they're willing to go to a soft Brexit, where the UK will still be inside the European Customs Union. And this clashes directly with the political interests of an important sectors of the Conservative Party. Of course, this is the political party of the dominating areas. And this attempt to have Theresa May as to close all of these gaps, it is to, at the same time as approving a Brexit, is totally impossible here. Something that led to the defeat of Theresa May. After 4 or 5 votes, it was impossible. It was because his own parliamentary people didn't vote in favor. And apparently, Johnson, he's willing to confront this problem, willing to put the Conservative Party problems first. And at the end, he wants a Brexit without an agreement. It would be terrible for his interests. But for this reason, we are at this point right now, and we're still not clear, because I think that on October 31st, there may be a new extension. Thank you very much, Jorge. Let's go to Hugo Resta from France. So let's analyze the same thing. Well, okay, listen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to greet all of our audience. Well, what I wanted to reflect upon was the most profound reasons that had led to this crisis in the bourgeoisie. And not only in England, but all of the countries that are led by the British Council. Well, I think there is a more profound reason than just a simple difference. I think that there is a profound problem because there is going to be a huge economic disaster, because the GDP of Great Britain will decrease in order to the third trimester to a 2% and up to 4% in 2021. And it has been estimated that this decrease could lead to a financial crisis. The recession and the increase in their currency could conduce to bankruptcy that in time could always be tracked down to the banks. So the UK is in no situation to have a contraction in your stories, and this could take us to a profound crisis. In 2018, the Bank Association had estimated that the GDP descend to 7.5, and even worse, in the crisis of 2008-2019, it is said that this place is very small, and that not all the precautions are being taken. We have to ask ourselves, what leads one party and the other to defend the actual pattern?
con el 31 de
So it's
octubre.
important to cut with October 31st.
Las consecuencias en términos
The consequences
económicos
in terms of
más
economic
sería
of the economy would be
bastante fuerte perturbación del funcionamiento
would
de
be
la
to
economía,
destabilize the
del,
functioning of the economy.
del trasvasije de mercancías entre
And
Europa
this
y el
import-export
Reino Unido, y no
between
solamente entre
goods and
la Europa
services,
continental, sino también con Irlanda.
I think
Ahora,
would suffer a little bit. But this
va a generar
will
una
generate
desorganización completa,
an
por ejemplo, de algunas
organization
cadenas de producción,
of some produced
y este
chains.
elemento
And in this
hace
sense,
que el Reino Unido
the UK
caiga en el riesgo de una nueva
can fall
ola de
in a new wave of
no tanto por las
kicking
cuestiones
out
de orden
some
aduanero,
governments
sino por las rupturas que se van a producir
due to the ruptures
en las cadenas de producción.
that are caused in the chains of production. So
Un retroceso de la industria,
this would be to go step backs
sobre la finanza,
in the commerce.
Reforzar la especialización, y donde el
So
Reino
it is
Unido tiene
important to find
una gran,
a new solution as
capacidad
opposed
de
to what's apparently going to happen. So, hello?
Sí, le oímos.
Yes, we hear you.
Le oímos, Hugo.
ya. La situación es que
So the situation
lleva a
is that this leads us to
una orientación
an orientation
hacia la finanza,
towards the
lo que
finance,
se podría concebir como
and
una
that could be
profundización del modelo que se
attained through making using the model that was used in 1979 and that is coherent with the ideology of those who want to manage Brexit
en un sistema
in a
de
system
lo que se llama la alianza
that is called the
de los
alliance
que se enriquecen con las
of those
rentas.
who become rich just
Esa
off the
alianza
rents.
entra en
This
juego
alliance
con una posición de orientación de Gran Bretaña hacia Estados Unidos y rompimiento entonces con
This alliance would mean that they have to
la Unión Europea.
cut off with the European Union and get closer to the United States. Before we had intervention with you guys, we would like to analyze who is Boris Johnson, where does he come from, what are his interests. The Trump president recalled that he called Boris Johnson the most adequate man. He said that in the G7 meeting in the UK. I would like to ask you, Jorge, about this topic. But if at the end, will there be some white smoke? Because let's not forget that Boris Johnson said he would rather die if he wasn't going to find a solution. Well, Boris Johnson has put himself in a no way out situation because now he's asking for an extension. He doesn't have the support of his party for his line of thinking. Let's not forget that some congressmen have been kicked out because they did not vote with their Congress. So he has two alternatives. One is the one that he says, and what he's trying to do is to attain an agreement before October 31st. This is 5 weeks. And then reach the European Council with a proposal that is good for both parties. The other option is that he has insinuated that should he not reach an agreement, he would resign, he would step down. And this would, what he would do is put the responsibility on this on the opposition. So this apparently is the move that he's trying to do. So he's a politician that is extremely cynical, has no principles. He's only interested in his own power. Just to the doors of the approval of Brexit, he wrote two op-eds where he stated he thought that he could speak in pro of the Brexit. But to attain that now, he has gone much more to the right of his party. He has had to kick out 20 congressmen. He loses his majority, and now he's playing a very dangerous card. The only way that this could work is if he goes to general elections and presenting himself as that who fulfills the will of the people. And this is something like what Trump does, because he thinks that he can have some reaction, some results. And this is only good to go forward with his short-term objectives. Thank you, Jorge. Let's go back to Hugo. Let's ask Hugo if is Boris Johnson more pro-U.S. than any other sector? I think that there is evidence of this. Because within all of the conventions of the European Union, what they want to do is to have an economic center that could have some pressure on other economic forces. And of course, this is aligned to the Trump policy. And what they want is to reduce the influence of the European Union, not only in terms of economic power, but also of political power, in the new strategic positioning that are being produced. Now, having an ally that is close to the European Union, like UK, is an objective that could only be attained through a success of the Boris Johnson policy. Well, he cannot only be involved in this policy because of his own political positions. But of course, there are some sectors behind him that are fundamental in the UK economy, because otherwise he would not have reached where he is now. But what does it mean that historical sectors, the most conservative, have opposed this pushing forward that Boris Johnson is promoting, trying to attain a situation, a more civilized and more thought of solution. So these are not only strong perturbations in the economic field that could take 1 or 2 years, but there will also be risks of fundamental change in the central economic orientation of the European Union.
Política industrial productiva estaría siendo amenazada.
This means that there might be a risk at the developing of economic strive. So,
una posibilidad de que Gran Bretaña adquiera peso
there is a
en
possibility
el
where
terreno,
the
de
UK
la-
could attain more power
de
in
la
the
ola
negotiation
financiera,
spectrum.
internacional. Eso significa apostar
This means
a
to
una
bet
situación de desequilibrio
on an
profundo,
instability,
porque en caso
a
de
profound
una gran recesión
instability.
que se puede producir, estaría cayendo estrepitosamente.
This means that it would be
Por
falling.
eso, una parte de,
So, a part
de las alianzas
of the alliances,
interburguesas que están presionando por
alliances that within Bolivia that are fighting for an exit, an immediate exit
es para generar un
of those
choque,
people,
es para
is to
generar una
create
situación
a
en la
clash,
cual
to create a
esos sectores
situation.
Se ampararían de un problema
So what they would do is
que lo presentarían
just say
para
that there is a single
solucionarlo
problem and
de
what they
una
need is
manera
a
que
single
les convenga
solution.
al
That of course
mundo anglosajón,
benefies
en el cual se
them
incluye Estados Unidos, indudablemente.
and all of their kin.
Por eso es que
So this is why
sería una manera de
it would be a way
con Europa.
to cut the ties with Europe. Thank you, Hugo. Let's go to Hugo. If we go a little bit behind all of this, can we find that the UK, because let's not forget what we said at the beginning of the card. This is a democratic discussion within a classist relationship. And this seems to be contradictory. How do you see this? Well, the way out that Boris Johnson are not the best, but of course they're anti-democratic. Because now we have a prime minister that was not elected in elections themselves, but from a three-person list on the Congress. And all of this was done with the contest of Her Majesty. All of this is constitutional, and it reveals how superficial the people are. So at the same time, we see that for 3 centuries, there have been brutally strong measures of austerity. And this has made that the working class cover with all of the weight of the crisis. So what they want to do is to give back the union of the workers their rights in a perspective of spending money on them on Friday. As soon as there's moment for Boris Johnson, then the right comes in, and of course there's another left that would come in, and of course there might be a new director, and this would be directed by a socialist that could respond to the interest of the working class. And this would be after 30 years of austerity. Thank you very much to Jorge and Hugo. Till soon. Well, both of our analysts say that the UK is going through a crisis that cannot be determined, but it's been one of the worst in the past years. At this, there is a coincidence between you and me. Let's see other actors that are involved in all this. We'll be right back. And depending on who is going to benefit from the situation. And well, let's say we're right back in Critical Moves. We're speaking about the crossroads of the Brexit. that reveals a crisis in the political sector. What other factors are going around, and who's going to benefit for one or the other option? Analysts say that the fall due to the Brexit will give benefits to their opposition. For example, Frankfurt could be the new headquarters that leave UK after the Brexit. Just at the beginning of the year, the Amsterdam Major said that many of the companies of the UK are leaving, and they're coming to Germany. Apparently, 100 companies have left to Amsterdam, and more than 125 were considering them. Of course, those of the concerned and of several commercial aspects, they're leaving because this agreement could leave many people without work. At the same time, this torturous path of the negotiations have left people saying that they do want to keep in the European Union. Well, just 80% is Denmark, Ireland also agrees with this. The approval to stay in the Brexit keeps on going. Let's go to Alejandro Alvarez. He's a professor of UNAM in Mexico. So, to leave or not to leave? How do you see it? Well, up until now, what I heard, I totally agree in many of the aspects that have been spoken of. And I would like to highlight that this thing of has taken us to a constitutional crisis. And it shows the fragility of the democracy, of the British democracy, that depends on powers that are not necessarily in the parliament, but have huge decisions, such as the Queen. And here, this means that there's a constitutional weakness because the right wing of the parliament is pushing and has the support of the Queen to dissolve the parliament and to at least leave it without having any action until October, so they could capitalize this to gain people that support it. The anticipation of election and to keep on provoking it so there is no agreement when leaving the European Union. And in fact, it's just they're trying to have an abrupt exit that could be extremely expensive for millions of people, not only in the UK but also abroad. This is one reality. Let's not forget that the UK came into the European Union, but they never adopted the currency. So this reflects that in fact their financial operations that have been for over 100 and so many years, that is based in London, these interests of the financial capital have also been threatened, and they will not be able to be competitive in regards to Europe and China, in regards to the US and the rest of Europe. So here we have a contradiction that is fairly important, because the transnational capital is seeing this situation as going in reverse, and that would imply many people get in trouble. Probably the sector that is most competitive. So there is one topic that one should analyze is that the right began to explode the Brexit topic, threatening the British people that when the immigrants came, he would do away with all of the institution of democracy. When in fact it has been Europe so the idea that we have to push to an exit with no agreement is an exit that evidently wants to hit England, and this is on Donald Trump's tab. On the other hand, it's a blow not only economic, but also politically and military, because UK is a nuclear power, and this is an element that nowadays has an important field of extraction. So the site, the place of the Brexit has been a huge provocation to the right, to Donald Trump, and to weaken the European Union would be terrible. And of course, they would have their own card to negotiate with China and the alliances of Europe, of Eastern Europe, like the one with Russia and with other countries. So this is a very complex move, and I would say that it's even dangerous because the integration has been a very slow process with lots of implications. And of course, it is said that fast, but of course, leaving in these conditions, this leaving would have a cost in the productive system for Great Britain, with very hard consequences. And from the point of view of the design, of the political international design, there would be the panorama would be much more complicated. So that's why the reason and that why he had several consequential defeats. So after a while that he was rejected, we are now seeing that the population of England is very clear with the problem that leaving the Brexit implies in these situations. So I think that the scenario of a hard Brexit that will be equivalent to a larger earthquake. In the case that it would be some kind of a commercial pursuit, I think that anyways it would have some effects. And in that case, I think in both sides, that is the soft, the ones that are softer and the ones that are stronger, the ones that want to negotiate and those who just want to leave, it is seen that the neoliberal policies have been worn out, just like in the rest of the world, and now they're exposing the disaster and in this sense is what we're going to see of the option that is mentioned of a young and non-corrupt leader that decides to walk the path, because this is totally already washed out. Well, I would like to thank both of my guests. However, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. We'll be right back. Okay, so let's speak about this political move. This is a very complex scenario, because Boris Johnson wants to go through with the Brexit. This reveals that there is a bourgeoisie elite and how these two interests really have inequality. And a third conservative area wants to leave no matter what. And then we were explained by Professor Fernandez, because he says that trying to push Donald Trump's button is very dangerous. And Hugo said that the economic and financial problem is always a deterring element. And everything indicates that this affair will also reveal how tired both parties are. This is the end of Critical Moves. We'll be right back. We will come back tomorrow.